Good morning, my dear colleagues, and thank you, Dr. Patricia Valerio and Dr. Banyu Yesilbek, for inviting me to this online congress to share with you my passion for functional jaw orthopedics in this difficult period where we all have to take distance against our natural way of chairing. I will from now on use FJO for functional jaw orthopedics and SG for stomatognatic system. We will deal today with the wonderful complexity and power of nature. My message today is very simple. As an answer to the title of this Congress, I would like today to show how FJO, through the restoration of a physiological function, could be one of our best therapeutical ally to deal with the complex problem of craniofacial growth and the fundamental need to prevent and correct as early as possible gross dysmorphosis. I'm not here to teach, I'm not a teacher, or prove I'm not a scientist. I will have accomplished my mission today if you go back to your practice with the three main ideas that 1. Nature is complex and powerful. 2. We are not able to treat any pathology or dysmorphosis without the help of nature's self-regulation mechanisms. 3. FJO is much more than what you often heard about it, and it is one of the most powerful therapeutical tools to deal with the complexity of nature. The world is divided in two, the ones who ask questions and the ones that has answers. But as Albert Einstein said, don't look for the ones who have the answers, but for the ones who have the questions. So today, I'm not here to give you answers, but to ask you some questions to think over. As I told you, I'm not a teacher or a scientist. I'm just a dentist, facing every day the complexity of nature and having a responsibility to find solutions to deal with this complexity by getting down to basics for every new patient. So, we have a problem. We have to make this system function properly. Otherwise, we will not be able to solve our patient's problem. And this function is a priority. We cannot live without it. The good thing about this problem is that as we will see it, it's also the solution. We love to simplify problems by reducing them to a fragment of the whole problem. Here's the fragment. We usually isolate to reduce the complexity of our problem. But if we look around our fragment, we see that it's a part of other structures. Structures assembled as systems, bone systems, or neurological systems. Systems that are also connected to more structures and more systems, and quite a lot of them, building an organism called a human being. So maybe dentist or orthodontist is not the adequate name for what we deal with. Maybe we have to broaden our scope here, from our initial target to the cell. Because as we try to simplify our problems, we lose a great deal of information along the way, and at the end, we miss our real target, and we lose the game. And switch from local view to global view, and from a static point of view to a dynamic point of view. We will have to remember that always that movement is one of the key concepts of all living systems, and that, as we will understand, looking to fascias especially, each movement is unique, and all that happens for us dentists through this incredible interface that we name occlusion. Occlusion is the epicenter of the main dynamics that concern our therapeutics. What a bad choice of name for this complex living system. Occlusion means closing, and this articulation is the exact opposite. It's an opening towards our whole body, and consequently its general complexity enhanced by its chaotic structures. And why did nature choose chaotic systems to function? Because it's a way to deal with complexity. But chaos doesn't mean without organization or meaning. A tree with a perfect organized global shape is made of a chaotic organization of branches. But it is still a perfect organized tree. The body follows the same pattern. A perfect organized organism is made of chaotic structures. Here is the first image of a microscopic view of a fascia structure with its chaotic network of collagen fibers and microspaces. And we will see how fascias can be seen as a perfect illustration of the physiological mechanisms supporting the relevance of FGO. In chaos theory, chaos is not disorder, but a fluctuating order that is established between interacting elements. The system is always adapting and regulating itself in a non-static but dynamic way. It is for this reason that it is totally illusory to think that we can master the growth of the jaws with constraining systems or rigid protocols, used mainly at the stage of adult dentition. We must always remain vigilant and observe the expression of this growth to constantly adapt our therapy to its hazards. And we should never forget that each functional movement is unique, supported by a unique, non-predetermined, non-linear or chaotic mechanical behavior, depending on the inside or outside constraints, even for similar movements, like the deduction you see on this video. So multiplicity is the rule in nature, and we will have to adapt our therapeutical point of views to this characteristic. So, one way to have a chance to deal with this complexity is to switch to a more holistic view of our patients and to use our wonderful senses to observe the function of our patients, listen to their symptoms, palpate their muscles and trigger points, and analyze all these informations and signs to take decisions and make treatment plans. The important thing is not what we see, but the way we see it. Observe a patient eat, drink, and breathe tells you more than any radiological or electromyographic exam. Look, think, and act. This sequence should remain our therapeutical posture guide forever. And we should not forget three other senses: proprioception, nociception, equilibroception, and especially the ones that are of huge importance for our practice: proprioception and equilibroception. Nociception should never be stimulated during a treatment, otherwise the brain will stop all regulation processes to protect the body structures. That is one of the main qualities of FGO treatments compared to fixed treatments. And also one of the most important sense, but less considered because it's not perfectly known yet, and strongly determined by multiple factors, is the interoception. So, with our new way of looking at nature, we travel from the outside to the inside world, passing through this fundamental interface called the SG system, working as a connection between our environment and our body, from exteroception to interoception and return, the basis of epigenetics, with the powerful mechanisms of self-regulation without whom functional therapeutics will be helpless. To deal with the great complexity of nature and treat our patients not from a dental point of view, but from a holistic point of view. Holistic health states that a continuity of harmonical structures and balanced function is what determines our body, and that our body can be described as a system of systems. So if we go down to basics, the term of orthopedics is far from a recent one. Nicholas Andrew in 1741 invented it in his book Orthopedia and described it as the art of preventing and correcting body deformities in children. And he added in the title, by means accessible to all parents. So we just added two dimensions to the concept of Andrew, the function and the jaws, to complete FGO. So today, let's pick up the fruits from the Andrew tree with first the what fruit, then the why fruit, and at least the how fruit. So first, what is FGO for a majority of dentists? Here's the first example of what is commonly described as functional appliances. standardized silicon splints with standardized selection protocols. And other examples of functional appliances: you have the lingual envelope from Dr. Bonnet, the palatal expansion plate, acrylic maxillar splint with extraoral forces, twin block of variable types, and the pool. And here are the most commonly described specifications of FGO according to the majority of dentists. Interception of bad habits, preliminary phase before braces, standardized silicon splints or rigid appliances with mostly acrylic, invasion of oral cavity, associated extraoral forces, predominance of mandibular translation movements, not suited for alignments of dental arcades, and requiring a phase of genetic growth. But what is really FGO for you? Not that, but much more. It's a complete multisystemic treatment with rigid and elastic appliances, mostly wire, with better respect of intraoral space, with no artificial and non-muscular forces, with transitional and rotational mandibular movements, with dental alignments obtainable and stable, and at last we stimulate bone growth at any age. So FGO is one of the best tools, we can say, to stimulate the self-organization of the SG system. So let's see the actual paradigms of orthodontics. The main treatment targets in orthodontics are the teeth. The principle of action are inflammation, which is a pathological system. The tool is mostly complex. The treatment age is late, rather, from 7 to 8 years up to more. The mechanism of action is artificial force. The functional action is segmentary. The corrections are unstable. We have 70% relapse with braces. And the limits, without, of course, surgery treatments, are severe mandibular endognosis, severe hyperdivergences, severe bone basic shift, and new functional problems. When we look at FGO, we have new paradigms. So the main treatment target will not be the teeth now with FGO, but the bone bases. The principle of action will be stimulation, which is physiological. The tool will be much more simple. The treatment age will be very early, in fact, from the birth. The mechanism of action will be proprioception. The functional action will be multisystemic. The corrections are more stable. And the limits are motivation, of course, radicular divergences, severe teeth rotations, and delta tractions. But the main goal is not to put orthodontics and orthopedics against each other. We must have the broadest tool available. But we have to make them collaborate, but with always in mind the minimum iatrogenic effects possible. So why FGO? Why shall we use FGO more than the way it is used today? We have at least 8 good reasons. The first one is that we are dealing with living, adaptive human beings, and so we know it today with epigenetics. Each appliance we put in the mouth of our patients will have a local action with a global reaction, unique to each patient. We should never forget the notion of evolution that makes it very difficult for us to predict the final state of the system, even if many orthodontists still think that their protocols will give them predictable results. Second reason is the proprioception of the SG system is extremely fine and use many pathways, and the muscular network attached to it is extremely powerful. So we have to be very aware of the action of our tools, and especially of the type, intensity, and localization of our stimulation. We perform, like Plan has stated it, a neuro-occlusal rehabilitation and not only occlusal. 3. This is what made clinical geniuses such as Planas and Vilma Simoes develop such effective, non-invasive therapeutical tools. Physiology must stop being an enemy to become an ally. Our appliances are only stimulators and regulators, stimulating the power of self-regulation of the SG system, which is much more powerful than we will ever be. 4. We must adapt us to the maturation period of the SG system. We must start as early as possible. Birth. Breastfeeding is the first functional appliance, and then 3-4 years for the first orthopedic treatments, and know how to adopt the rhythm of nature and not the rhythm of our tools and protocols. The stability of our treatments is at this cost. Correcting a system that needs 25 years to mature within a 2 or 3 years period is a mirage. The notion of maturation of the SG system, and in particular the occlusion plane, is essential. Every patient is unique, and has its own development and growth regimes. We cannot be easily predicted because they react in a unique way to the environment. Epigenetics is a powerful factor of variability between individuals and is one of the scientific justification for the action of FGO. The SG system, and in particular the occlusion, are strongly subjected to environmental conditions. We must constantly observe the response of the system and adapt our treatments according to these answers. Also, changing the shape, aligning dental arches, and getting to our standard position of the class 1 is not enough to equilibrate the function and finalize our treatments. Because the shape adapts to function, and a proper physiological function is the only one able to create the balance and maintain it. So the shape will change again in the wrong way if the function is not balanced, and it will lead to relapse of the dysmorphosis. 7 reason: don't adapt your treatments to your therapeutical tool, waiting for the mouse to be ready to use it. Do the exact opposite. Why not finding a therapeutical tool that you can use as soon as the problem is diagnosed? 7. We are physiotherapists of global health. Multidisciplinarity management must be a foundation of our therapy, because it's the only way to approach a complex system such as the SG system. 8. The stomatognathis system is open, complex, self-regulated, dynamic, chaotic servo system. So let's take some time to try to analyze the different phases of this complexity that we have to consider and cannot avoid. First, the SG is a system, and a system is an ensemble of elements organized into a dynamic interaction to achieve a function. The great mathematician Darcy Thompson had understood this problem already in 1970. And his important book on growth and form, where he discovered the complexity of living systems, that we tend to simplify, as he said, and the interrelation of all body systems, shaped one upon the other, and the need for them to interact to stimulate body growth and maintain its composite integrity, to avoid to cease to exist. So, as Darcy Thompson understood for more than a century ago, we still tend to isolate the different elements too much to simplify the analysis of the treatment of the SG system. These elements are in constant compensatory adaptation. They all participate in the occlusion balance. Domestication put them in relation, making emerge the occlusion like a sculpture. It is therefore that chewing must be balanced by our therapeutics to have a chance to correct the system. We should always have them in mind during our treatments and choices of appliances. Another aspect of the SG as a system is that it is a unique and complex articulation made of several interrelated systems, with two main units connected by a double joint and surrounded by many very powerful muscles and very sensitive proprioceptors. And one of our therapeutical priority should always be functional symmetrical stimulation, because any asymmetrical function triggers peripheral compensations and freedom of movements, because any occlusion interference disturbing mandibular and TMJ movements favors asymmetries by avoidance reflexes and muscular compensations. In 1968, Bartholomew, an Australian biologist, introduced the concept of a global vision of the body, a non-reductionist and non-mechanistic systematic conception of life. He described an open system as a system in dynamic interaction with its environment, adaptive and complex. He was considering the organism as a whole, non-reducible to the sum of its elements, reacting and responding to its environment. If we suck our thumb, eat soft food or clench, we will change the proprioception with excess or lack of stimulation, disturbing the oral functions and leading to change of shape and growth. The third characteristic of an open system is that it is included in a globality of several systems. Our organism is an assembly of interconnected open systems. The masticatory system is interrelated with all the other systems. All these systems need energy to tend permanently to a higher level of organization, and must therefore be open systems interacting with their environment to capture their energy. The SG system is at the center of a globality. Its many regulating properties, like cortical stimulation, bone modeling, ocular equilibration, ventilatory regulation, fascial stimulation, postural equilibration, and gastric regulation and stimulation, appears like new emerging properties, different from the properties of its parts, like the teeth, tongue, jaws, etc. The innovation of the masticatory system connects it to the whole body, especially thanks to the trigeminal nucleus, the polyvagal system, and the fascia network. The SG system is a complex system in dynamic interaction with many other systems in the rest of the body. All the interactions are once again ensured by the intentional function of the system, the mastication, swallowing, and breathing, and its major determinant, the occlusion. We can no longer ignore the crucial importance of chewing, because it makes the link between all elements of the systems and is responsible for part of its complexity. So, all treatment of the SG system must have as a main objective the restoration of all physiological oral functions with a balanced mastication. Chewing means bone remodeling with or without genetic growth. We have a morphogenetic action here, and maintaining of the balance of the structures. Another factor of the complexity of the SG system is its proprioceptive aspect. It is precisely the complexity of the system that makes early treatments essential and makes it impossible to treat only with our tools, whether fixed or removable, without needing the indispensable help of physiology and its self-regulating abilities, with multidisciplinarity team working together. Our tools are all much too simple to achieve this long-term goal alone, and one of the most important emerging property capable of regulating this system is equilibrated chewing. The functional appliance is an interface, not a therapeutic grid imposing its law on the living. The complexity of the SG system cannot be reduced to a symptom. That is just an alert signal of the disorganization of the system. Each patient presents a specific organization of his system according to his functional and personal history. A distocclusion is not equal to another distocclusion. Avoid the protocols. When we use braces, we treat mostly the symptom, meaning the consequence of the disorganization of function. When we use FGO, we treat the disorganization itself by reorganizing a physiological function and permitting the self-regulation process to occur. To give ourselves a chance to deal with the complexity of the Aegis system, we should always treat our patient very early and through 3 stages. Systemic, history of the patient, traumas, postural deficiencies, general health, psychic status, craniomandibular, TMG, neck, airway, and in the end position, dental, malocclusion. Most of the time, we are obsessed with the dental aspect of the problem, which is the more obvious and easy to diagnose. To face complexity our treatments should also consider the inevitable multidisciplinary aspects, the self-regulation capacities, and the evolutive dimension of nature, imposing evolutive treatment plans. The SG system is open because it's capable of self-organization. The system tends actively, by its functions, towards a better organized state and constant evolution of the occlusal planes, for example, with the constant dental attrition and bone remodeling. It is a structure produced by its function. This is called the Wolff's law. Occlusion is also a dissipative structure. A part of the energy is not transformed into stimuli and is lost by the friction between the teeth, which needs sufficient permanent energy, with resilient food, for example, to regulate itself. Oral functions have properties of amplification and regulation. Another aspect of the complexity is the dynamic character of the system over time, because it is submitted to a random type stimulation, depending on the degree of food hardness, age, lifestyle, and parafunctions, which determines the great variability of the mandicatory dysfunction and dysmorphosis. Because of its constant evolutionary aspect, we must treat it without blocking it, and with evoluting treatment plans instead, using different appliances, constantly re-evaluated throughout the development of the system. The evolution of open living systems is constant, as they continually interact with their environment by adapting to it. So the main goal of any treatment should be to release as soon as possible the functional dynamics that allows to evolve towards equilibrium, to allow the achievement of homeostasis. The SG system is chaotic, as we already stated earlier. And at least it's a server system. Petrovic, the great genius, adapted the model of the server system to describe the neurosensory functioning of the SG system, because it figures the control and regulation processes responsible for intermaxillary occlusal adjustment during postnatal facial skeletal growth, and because it explains all of the basis mechanisms of FGO. Because the functional appliance can be described as the new peripheral comparator from its insertion in the mouth, sending the new sensitive afferences and the new neurofeedback, new neurosensory engrams, as they call them, as the regularity and corrective response by reduction of the intermaxillary difference signal. So how FGO now? Between the stomatic system and FGO, we have a multidisciplinarity synergy. So now let's evaluate the relation between the Aegis system and FGO under different aspects. FGO principles of action use many systems. The main gate of therapeutical action is the proprioception, associated with a therapeutical change of mandibular posture, that is from Vilma-Simoes studies. because it is how the information is given to the system. The information will then be transmitted by three major proprioceptive pathways: trigeminal nerve and nucleus, vagus nerve and nucleus, and the huge fascia network. The other gate of action is mechanical, through muscles, bone, and there again through one of the most powerful, fascias. At least but not least, the last gate is the cell, with the important mechanism of mechanotransduction responsible for bone growth and remodeling. Let us now make a quick overview of the different systems stimulated by FGO action. First, on a neurological level, the large number of orofacial proprioceptors are at the starting point for the relationship between the G system and the central nervous system. They inform the central nervous system about mandibular and cephalic posture, about intensity, duration, and localization of the function. We should be particularly aware of the importance of occlusal balance and resilient food mastication to help the function provide sufficient stimulation for sufficient afferent responses. Example, the growth of the condyle is of adaptative type and directly correlated to the function. There are important areas for therapy where proprioceptors are highly concentrated: tongue, premaxilla, and TMJ. Appliances should focus on stimulating these areas especially, all this stimulation increasing central nervous system afferences. We should never forget that it is the stimulation that guides the function and therefore the development of the system. The trigeminal nerve is the fundamental crossroad of the neurological control of the G system. So, it is at the basis of all treatments. Michel Clozad even proposes to give the occlusal dysmorphosis the name of trigeminal pathologies. At the difference from all the other cranial nerves, it's a mixed nerve. Conveys exteroceptive, proprioceptive, interoceptive, and motor information. The trigeminal nerve participates in the mediating role of the brain between the outside world and the inner world, with the SG system interfacing between the two. On the left scheme, the trigeminal nucleus is an important crossroad which connects the SG system to the whole body by its connection with the brainstem via the nuclear trigeminal complex of the brainstem, TBNC, as you see on the left image, and so both to the ocular, vestibular, and podal system via the spinal cords and legs. On the right scheme, the connection with the limbic system through the spinal cord and the brainstem is also of extreme importance because it connects the mouth to the whole psychic field, like stress. So, the connection between the mouth and the trigeminal nucleus is enough to describe the SG system as a complex system, and therefore the crucial importance of multidisciplinarity. So we can say that the SG system is our multidisciplinary balancing tool. Implication of a very large number of muscles is another factor of complexity, but also a factor of functional regulation and morphogenetic stimulation that is of highly interest for our treatments. The muscle network with its proprioceptive sensors must be considered as an extension of the nervous system. The muscle network is our best therapeutic ally because it's irreducible. We are aware now that when we put an appliance in the mouth of our patient, we stimulate many muscles, and this stimulation generates bone growth and remodeling. At all muscle bone insertions sites called entheses through the mechanisms of mechanotransductions, even at the level of a simple break. Mechanotransduction, one of our best allies in FGO, because giving us the chance to change direction, amount, localization, and shape of bone growth, even when the genetic growth is finished. Like in this example of the mandible condyle, the multi-directional condyle growth stimulation according to the condylar movement induced by the change of therapeutical mandibular posture provided by the use of a functional appliance. Mechanotransduction is once again a fundamental mechanism to explain the principles of action of FGO and seems to occur in a very important scale also through the fascia network. Well, many wrong ideas have been circulating around the subject of fascias. The concept of fascia has been going to all kinds of directions. And fascias are a quite expressive way to understand the complexity of nature and of our body in particular. And in my opinion, the fascia system's complex structures, as it has been recently discovered, is a perfect example of the unity and interrelation in our body, concepts that are of huge importance in the understanding of FGO mechanisms and how they are so well adapted to deal with this complexity. Today we will discover a new, much more interesting and fundamental aspect of what fascia really are and why they are so important. Xavier Bichat, a French pathologist, was the first in 1799 to talk about what we call membranes, and also one of the first to talk about the instability and irregularity of living organisms and the importance of functional education. But it was Andrew Still, father of osteopathy, who contributed the most to put fascia on the light. He described fascias as a fundamental vital network of nerves, cells and tubes covering all organs in all living beings, responsible for the elasticity of the body structures. Speaking of osteopathy, let's have a look at the body principles as stated by the founder of osteopathic medicine, Andrew Still. Human body function as a total biological unit. We cannot treat any body system without considering the other systems. Body possesses self-healing and self-regulation mechanisms. We cannot wish to treat any body system without the help of physiology. Structure and function are interrelated. We cannot separate body structures from the function involving them. Abnormal pressure in one part of the body produces abnormal pressures and strains in other parts. So every action, natural or therapeutical, will produce a reaction everywhere in the body. Don't you think those principles could in many ways be also the principles of functional orthopedics? That could be resumed in two keywords: unity and connection. We will see today how fascias are a great example of those principles and how fascias could stand as the perfect proof of the values of those principles, helping to understand why FGO is of such importance. We know more about Mars and the physiology of abyssal creatures than about our own body structures. But since 2015, and the important researches and discoveries of a great French plastic hand surgeon, Dr. Jean-Claude Guimbarteau, who have been filming fascias with his tissular endoscope for the last 20 years during more than 1,000 surgeries, our inner body structures can now be seen under a whole new perspective, forcing us to another brainstorming. The endoscopic exploration of Guimbarteau lead to several new ways of looking at our inner body and the striking beauty of its structures. So he had discovered global structures with a specific 3D architecture made of adaptive elements. Connective tissue is also constructive tissue. Importance of the extracellular world. Internal body loads. And apparent chaos supporting vital efficiency. That's how he described roughly the fascia, how in the way he discovered them with his endoscope. Here is the definition proposed recently by the Fascia Research Society, which is the main organism in the fascia field today, to describe the fascia system. Please sorry for all the text in the slide, but I want you to read what is in red. 4 most fundamental points that are of highly interest for FGO. All the structures that we stimulate through our FGO treatments are related to fascias, and the SG system is connected to all body systems. So maybe you understand better with the fascial system how it could be of huge importance in our field of action. So let's now explore the physiological characteristic of this incredible system. The main discovery that Dr. Gamberto made traveling under the skin with his endoscopic camera is a structure as a network under pre-strain of the connective tissue connecting all organs in an elastic way. Due to the existence of polyhedral microvacuoles filled with a liquid under tension. That's what explains the return to the original shape once the strain is over. It is the anatomical application of a new science called tensegrity that is present in many structures, as the needle tower sculpture of Snelson, for example, a structure with the faculty to stabilize itself by a system of tensions and compressions that balance the whole structure and maintains its stability. Fascias can also be seen as a structural architectural support that maintains the shape of the organs and body. So in that way, it is a main postural regulator working independently beside muscle and bones. Support of the muscular system and transmission of load with a protective action against strains and overloads. They are one of the main elements of posture maintenance thanks to the tensegrity phenomenon. Hypothesis and actual common concept. Fascia is a fibroelastic membrane that covers or wraps an anatomical structure. The reality is much more different. It's a huge connective and continuous network composed of connective tissue rich in collagen fibers. Look how the fibers unfold as the tissue is tracted. Amazing. Just letting you look at this beautiful image of the living fascia. The extracellular matrix, which is also fascia, is always presented in the books with a few collagen or elastin fibers surrounding the cell. We always try to simplify nature. The reality, as it has been marvelously shown by Dr. Gamberto, is totally different, with a very dense fiber network, and even when the cells are not present, there is no emptiness. The fascias are always there. Dr. Gamberto has shown that continuity in the body don't result in an alignment of cells. The extracellular fibers makes the link between the cells. The fascia is a true organ with its own communication network independent from the nervous system, sending information at the speed of sound. Faster than the nervous system, it connects through the same tissue continuity, the skin, or the teeth, or the mucosa, to the cell through continuous tissue. Pericardium, pleura, peritoneum, perineurium, dura mater are all fascias. The living matter is a whole unified. We all have the same global aspect, but are all unique inside. The notion of globality and unity are the main characteristic of holistic medicine, as FGO tends to be. So we can resume the characteristic of the fascia as a human protective architecture and postural regulator, a proprioceptive and connective network, and a continuous link between all parts of the body from cell to skin. Fascia has a multitude of functions, including force transmission, movement and stability, proprioceptive communication throughout the body, and in promoting sliding and reducing the friction associated with motion. The fascias are connected to the muscle and integrated between the muscular fibers. They also connect all the muscles together, so they enhance FGO action. As Dr. Gamberto discovered during his endoscopic journeys under the skin, is that each movement is unique and that the environment determines a unique way of reacting to it. Always the power of epigenetics again. The bone structure is also a part of this fibrillar connective tissue, but with a higher density, connecting the bone to the muscles and enhancing once more the orthopedic stimulation of our treatments. The fascia fibers surrounded the nerves and penetrates it, continuing the fibrillar network and keeping the tisular continuity. The vascular system is part of the fibrillar organization and has a very intimate relation with it. So any stimulation of the fascia network with an appliance, for example, or following a muscle contraction can have an effect on the vascular flow. And finally to the cell, which is encapsulated in the fascia and under the influence of its movement, changing the shape of the cell and modifying the mechanisms of mechanotransduction inside it. We can find those fibrillar structures everywhere in the body. They can be considered as the primary body architecture with the very same scheme for all organs. They conduct the proprioceptive information faster than the nervous system, reaching all the cells in the body. Now, we can consider that with the fascia network, FGO Therapeuticus have a third way, after muscle, trigeminal and vagus path, of stimulating the self-organization capacities of the body, bone growth and remodeling, enhancing tremendously all the regulation mechanisms at the basis of our treatments and ideally the overall health of our patients. So, to end this journey into our body's incredible physiology, it's time to give ourselves new axes of thought that should hopefully become guidelines for the future in order to have the best approach to treat our patients. Sorry for the last slide. So, our conclusion here will be that we are at the center of a fundamental neurosensory and psycho-emotional network. That's what makes our responsibilities so important. Our problem should not be only the mouth of our patient, but his entire body. The patient has most of the knowledge of himself. We don't. But we know what signs to observe. Who is he? What are his habits? How does he function? How is he evolving? Did I restore the functional capabilities of his system? So many fundamental questions not always considered in the stress of our daily practice. The appliances is not the treatment. It's a stimulation device to help the body repair itself, correcting its dysfunction, using its self-regulation capacities. Very often failure comes from a lack of the observation of the physiology of our patient. FGO, by the variety of stimulation of the edge systems that it favors, allows a better control of the hazards of growth by modifying the neuromuscular stimulation. Multidisciplinarity and permanent diagnosis with the use of different appliances and treatment options is the only possible way to treat the complexity of our patients and offer them a chance to recover their physiological balance. And let's try to get inspired by the great Nicolas Andrieux once again, doctor, founder of orthopedics. FGO is like the culture of the Andrieux tree. It is a matter of accompanying the growth of the masticatory system, of protecting it from the possible aggression of the outside world, of stimulating its ground, and knowing how to place tutors to reorient its growth by accompanying it until its end, while respecting its self-regulating capabilities without blocking them. And the last take-home message I want to give you is maybe the most important one. Never forget that we are part of nature's complexity and that we will not be able to solve or treat anything without the help of nature's extraordinary self-regulation processes. So the best therapeutical tool or the best human posture towards nature should be the one that enables the stimulation of those processes and don't affect or block them in any way. And I will let two great therapists that have always been an inspiration for me and still are give the final words to conclude our journey through living. Let the system respond, as Vilma Simoes always stated it. We can only maintain and trust the laws of life that nature has given to man. Thank you to Andrew Still for that one. And thank you